It's a surprise. Now it's a video podcast.
Yeah, that's good. Maybe I would have. I was like I got a haircut recently. So.
Should have bought your Starr Strength shirt.
Oh no, it's okay. It's my rest day today, so.
Fair enough. All right. Hey guys, welcome to the RAW Barbell Club podcast. I'm your host, coach, and all-around good guy, Andy. And today I'm here with Luke Starr, who is now becoming a regular on the podcast. This is the second appearance.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on again.
Oh, it's awesome.
Yep.
We just got done doing like a pretty fun little workout. You came halfway through. Feel free to take your shoes off if you want.
Yeah.
Feel comfortable.
We did. I came in and you guys were carrying a yoke around overhead around the gym. And
do you do much overhead stuff?
Like that?
Stuff? Yeah.
We were using that a lot, not so much in the last sort of training phase, but we have done in the past, and particularly with, like, if an athlete needs a bit more overhead stability work, like, we'll give them as a bit of an extra accessory piece, for sure, yeah.
And I think we talked last time, maybe not on the podcast, but you have gone to, like, the StrongFit stuff, right?
Yeah, so I have done, like, the StrongFit Coaches Week.
Yeah.
That's going back sort of year before last, like a little while ago, and it was actually the first time I met Julian and even knew about Julian was when I was with the Mind Muscle Project and they were interviewing him in LA, and I was with them at that time because the games were on and stuff, and so I was tagging along for some of their podcasts, and that was my first intro to all that. So
because obviously you were there coaching Alethea.
Oh, that year, you know what? That year I was actually just over there watching.
Oh, okay.
And like supporting Alethea. Adam Perry, my old business partner, was coaching her at that point. Yeah. And that year we'd had a team that was trying to make it over there, but we didn't make it. And so I went anyway. I always wanted to go check it out. So, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. I think it was the following year where I was coaching Alethea. Yeah.
And what were the big takeaways from learning from Julian and the StrongFit stuff?
My main takeaway was to get a bit more broad with the exercise selection in order to keep injuries down in the sport.
And we're talking about the sport of CrossFit, right?
Of CrossFit, yeah. I'm talking about CrossFit because that's mainly the athletes that I work with. So, rather than just doing a lot of sagittal plane, barbell type work.
And what is sagittal plane, just in case a listener doesn't
know?
Look,
just like one of the big issues that was starting to result in injuries in CrossFitters or trends that we were seeing was just always, raising and lowering barbells or doing bilateral movements where we're doing pull-ups and things like that, and both sides of the body are working at once in a very vertical kind of motion. So exposing the athletes to more like one-sided work or, contralateral, unilateral type work, single leg, single arm, different objects as well, dumbbells, and particularly dumbbells, but also just odd objects, strongman equipment and that kind of thing, seems to have a really important benefit for keeping the overuse injuries down, basically. Yeah.
And that was 2015? Or 16?
That must have been, I think it was 2016.
Okay, so 2016 was the year of the dumbbell in the open as well, right?
Yeah, and it's funny how it all works out because I think you see these, like within the CrossFit bubble, you see like waves of trends coming through it, which is just a natural evolution of what is a pretty new sport, really. So we're sort of, as a community, we're learning as we go. And people come up with good ideas and everyone wants to hear about them and learn about them. So that was like a pretty big kind of realization that was happening around that time. And it's also reflected in the type of events that we're seeing at the games and in the open and that kind of stuff as well. Yeah. It appears that CrossFit and I think we talked about this in the last podcast, was that they're trying to make sure that they're addressing that as well from their end in terms of the tests that they're putting out there for the athletes and that kind of thing.
Making sure that like CrossFit is sticking to what it's meant to be, which is like, what is it? Broad?
Yeah, increased work capacity to be across broad time and modal domains. Yeah. And that's definitely, even with the, the marathon rows and the cycling events and, swimming and getting, at the games themselves, they're pretty obviously able to put on a real broad spectrum of different type of events because it's a bigger budget and it's a bigger event, but it's what they would, I think, in an ideal scenario, it's what they would have the Open look like as well. You know, everyone would be able to do these outdoor events and that kind of thing. It's just a logistic impossibility, really, but yeah.
And what's funny is, like, last time I interviewed you, we talked a bit about, like, what you would like to see in the Open.
Yeah,
what you'd like to see at regionals and what you would like to see at the games.
Yeah.
And then now we've got this evolution in that there is no more regionals.
That's right.
So
the
the Open landscape is going to have to change.
That's right.
And the games landscape is obviously going to change. And now we have a whole bunch of other things. So I think this seems like a really good segue to go from, you know, obviously talking about the evolution of the sport of CrossFit to what's happening. So can you give us a little rundown on what's sort of going on?
Yeah, so at the moment we're in a bit of a limbo phase where CrossFit HQ have announced that there's no longer going to be a regionals, and it seems what they're saying is they're switching their focus into more the affiliate side of CrossFit rather than the sport CrossFit Games side of CrossFit, which means they're reducing the budget for things like the regionals and those kinds of events. And we're still actually waiting for the official rulebook to come through at this point in time right now. But they've put out some pretty important information. There's going to be sanctioned CrossFit events now that have got basically take the place of what regionals used to be, and they're going to be run by independent organisations around the world. That CrossFit is given the approval for them to run them, and that will be the pathway through to the games. Yeah.
So, from my understanding, the Open's still going to be around.
Yes.
And what they've said is that the top person it's top man and woman plus the top team from every single country that has an affiliate, so it can't be a country that doesn't have an affiliate, will win their ticket to the games.
Yeah, I believe the team one, I can't quite remember if they'd said that about each country, but the top man and top women in each country that has an affiliate, that's what's been said so far.
So that's potential. So normally at the games, how many athletes are there?
Yeah, so normally there's like 40 men, 40 women.
Okay, 40 men, 40 women. And then now there's a potential 150-something men and 150-something women?
I was reading an article that said potentially up to 350 athletes.
Okay. So that's 150 men, 150 women then.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Plus some from the sanctioned events as well. If that was the case, then what the actual type of event that CrossFit Games is going to be, I mean, you can speculate about what it will be, and there's been different articles going around, but there would need to be some kind of like different scoring system, obviously, but also like maybe some kind of culling process or elimination process in the early day or two of the competition, so that you can get to the standard of athlete that is sort of currently at the games. Yeah.
And so you just said that on top of that, there's going to be lifters qualifying from these individual events as well, these sanctioned events.
Yep.
What kind of events are they? So you've got, like, obviously, I think I heard Dubai Fitness Championships.
Yeah, they're slowly starting to announce sort of one by one these events.
And they said there's going to be 13, right?
16, I believe, yeah. And so far, I think they might have announced about 6 of them. Dubai was the first one.
Yep.
And that's the qualifier for that is happening now, and then that's actually happening towards the end of the year, the actual event itself. They just recently announced Wadapalooza in Miami is another one.
Yep.
And then they released a batch of 4 around the world. They announced them all together. There was one in South Africa, one in France, one in, I think, Brazil, and I think the other one was in the States.
Okay.
So far we've heard about 6, and there's going to be about another 10 released gradually. Oh, Granite Games was another one. I don't think I managed that. Yeah, so it must be 7. There's bound to be at least one in Australia. I would think with Australia's following in CrossFit and the amount of people that do it in this region, there should probably be 2 events, I would hope.
And the level of competition as well, right? Like,
yeah, that's right.
We dominate the female side of the podium at the games.
Yeah, that's right. So especially, the past few years, it's been very strongly represented, on the podium. So I think it has to be reflected in the number of sanctioned events there are in Australia. Yeah.
So, like, I know you're unsure about this, but let's say you have a small country such as New Zealand.
Yep.
The potential is that if you have an athlete that is a high talent such as yours, Alethea, and she did wish to compete again next year, like I don't know anything about what she's doing or whatever, then she almost gets a free pass to the games in that she's gonna be at the top already without having to do much.
Well, these are the details that we're yet to find out about. You know, like what is the eligibility for this one person from each country with an affiliate? Do they have to complete the Open there in that country, which if the Open's the same as what it's been in the past, it's like 5 weeks long. So does that mean they've got to like stay there for the 5 weeks, fly in, fly out? Do they have to be there from the start of the year? Do they simply have to be a citizen? That information may be out. I don't know. Maybe I haven't done my homework enough, but I haven't seen anything about that yet.
And do they need to be part of a particular affiliate inside that country as well?
All I've seen so far, and again I may be wrong, is that the affiliate, if an affiliate exists in that country and the person in that country or who's representing them in some way or whatever is the best in the country in the Open, then they're the one that will get the access to the games.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have another question.
Yeah.
Which is normal because this is how the podcast works.
That's your job.
That's my job. How many countries do you think are actually not represented in that they don't have an affiliate?
Well, I'm sure we could probably Google the number of countries in the world and minus that. Didn't they say 162 countries have an affiliate?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know the number.
And what's the logistical problem with someone who wants a free ticket to the games starting an affiliate in, let's say, where my parents are from, Sri Lanka, that might not have an affiliate, and then having their ticket stamped to the games by just doing the 6 workouts or 5 workouts?
Yeah, well, this is
minimum requirement.
This is going back to what I was saying before about the obvious complications of this strange new system that they've brought in.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the fact that it seems to be trying to make it more inclusive, and it's definitely going to probably promote the sport into areas of the world that may not have heard about CrossFit and that kind of thing. So I think in the long term, it's kind of a smart play in terms of raising awareness about CrossFit globally, and which is probably one of their main incentives for it. But in the short term, we're going to get a lot of random levels of athletes coming along to this thing and qualifying for the games, obviously. So going back to what I was saying before, however they do it, there may be some other levels of, maybe even if it's the first few days of this or the first day of this CrossFit Games next year, might be dedicated to kind of, weeding out a certain, group of that, so we can get to the smaller group of sort of really high level CrossFit athletes that we normally see. It'll be interesting. Definitely different scoring and elimination process, I guess. Yeah.
Last year you had quite a strong team that represented you guys, right?
We had you mean like Starr Strength?
Yeah, Starr Strength.
Yeah. So we had it was the first year that we, as my business, I guess, had an actual team at regionals.
Yeah.
And it was pretty exciting for us. Yeah. We ended up finishing about 12th place. So it was top 5 that went to the games. So
for your first year, having a team,
we were pretty happy. We were happy just to get there, to be honest, like to actually qualify a team. We were really stoked with that. The guys did awesome. And the 12th place was like something we're really stoked with. I love the team side of things. I'm really keen to see the official rule book as well, so that I can potentially start to plan if we can get a team to some competitions this year and take part in the season again. Yeah. I know the guys are pretty fired up after last year, and even the guys that didn't quite make that team, they would like to try and have a shot again as well. So just waiting. Waiting.
The reason I bring that up is what I've heard is that the affiliate rule is gone.
Yeah, so I first saw this mentioned on the Dubai Instagram, I think it was, when I was talking about the team requirements, and it's actually stated that there was no requirement for the team members to train at the same location or be part of the same affiliate. And
Yeah.
that's always been the rule. There's always been this thing called the more than half rule,
Yeah.
which means that all the team members have to do most of their training at the same location, more than half of their training together at the same location. This year was slightly different. It was 3 times a week was the minimum requirement. So if that's no longer in place, it just means that, and we don't know the full rules yet, but it seems like it's okay to assemble teams of athletes from wherever in the globe, and they only really need to show up and do the actual competition together. And apart from that, they may not even know each other or what have you. If that's the actual requirement, and it seems like that might be it. It's going to definitely change the whole landscape of the team comp. It's going to probably pull a lot more athletes who had individual aspirations that makes it more attractive maybe to them to form super teams, that kind of thing.
And to be fair, the super team thing has kind of been happening, because we know that Mayhem is basically a super team.
Yeah, I mean, you might know more than me about that, but I know that it's been. I mean, I've had teams going to regionals for years now, and it's always quite a big effort sometimes to ensure and follow up with all these athletes and make sure they're
coordinating their location.
Yeah, and we're recording, taking timestamp photos so that the HQ if they ask and that kind of thing. So it is. Probably it's a big monkey off HQ's back not to have to worry about that.
Yeah,
and it does simplify things quite a lot. It makes it exciting. From my point of view, it means that if this is the case, I've got different options for how I can potentially form teams, because we do have some athletes that follow the program from different areas.
Yeah, you could potentially have like a remote athlete team that you can just put together now.
Yeah,
on top of your team. There's multiple teams now.
Yeah, I guess you probably can. Some of in a way, it's a bit of a shame, because part of the thing that's enjoyable about the team thing is training together as a team, and that whole experience as well. So, it might be a case of having particular training weekends and that kind of thing where the guys can come together and do that kind of stuff is, ideal. It's a bit harder if they're in different countries or long, flights away and that kind of thing. I guess we'll have to wait and see. But I've been waiting for this rule book, I keep mentioning it, and it may not come for a while. HQ leave these things to the last minute, and sometimes. So
and that must suck for you as a coach who wants to and does plan constantly, right?
It's definitely a challenge. I thought this whole thing would have sort of rocked my boat a lot more in terms of because most of the people that I work with are competing in CrossFit in some way, shape or form, even if it's just recreationally. So it's quite important to all of us to know what's going on with our season.
Yeah.
This time of year, where are we? We're in October. If it was like a normal season, we're still a long way out from the Open anyway. And most of my athletes don't have like a major comp on, they'll be doing one comp between now and the end of the year, probably, a lot of them.
Like Torian.
Like something like Torian or something like that. I have some guys just doing the Granite Games as well over in the States. And, that's their sort of training style comp. It's not like their main peak for the year. And then people are getting ready for either the Open or regionals as like the other two kind of main ones. So at the moment, it is kind of a little bit like business as usual in a way, but thinking ahead for the rest of the year, and particularly if the guys, if there's anyone that wants to try and make the games out there, it's they've got to think obviously very carefully about how they want to do that and which comps they want to go for and peak for and that kind of thing. It used to be, the old system was all very one-dimensional. There's the CrossFit Games and there's the regionals and the Open. It was pretty clear kind of dates and everything, and it made for a very one-dimensional competitive year. Now what we've got, I think really the overall it's quite positive. What I'm struggling with is not knowing at the moment, but once all the information is out there, I think it's going to be a really positive thing for the sport. It's going to make for a much more interesting year of competing. It gives the athletes a lot more options on when and where they can compete in these different kind of fun events. And I think each of these sanctioned events will evolve to have a little bit of their own flavour to them, and they'll have different people programming them, so the events will be a little bit different. And, I think they're all pretty positive things. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. as a spectator,
Yeah.
it kind of seems like it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially because a lot of these competitions that they've chosen are the biggest competitions around the world next to the games, right?
Yeah, some of them are pretty well established and big events in and of their own right, and pretty exciting. And they do like a really good job of putting like exciting media out there about them, and you know, getting good videos and stuff coming out, really good events. And so, you know, I think that's a good thing. Like things like comps like Wadapalooza and Granite Games and Dubai are all like very respectable events. Like
in their own
pretty
right.
big scales, you know, in their own right. So more of that will be good.
You mentioned that a lot of these events have their own like big media that covers the game, those competitions, as well as, you know, being like pushing the competitions and showing them off to the public.
Yeah.
One of the big changes with CrossFit as well is that I think they fired a whole bunch of their media team, right?
Yeah, well, that was a big one because CrossFit and the CrossFit Games have always been so good at pumping the media out, and that's what's driven, obviously, a lot of the growth. And it's a lot of what helps to inspire a lot of the people that want to take part in it, because they're seeing these amazing athletes doing their thing, and they get really hooked on that whole the culture of it and everything, and it's quite exciting. So from what I hear, they're letting go a lot of those media people. It'll be interesting to see what comes out of CrossFit now, the CrossFit Games, and what the coverage is like. Hopefully it's still up to a good standard. I think it was a pretty significant expense that they've cut to get rid of the regionals. Like It sounded like some of those venues and some of those regionals locations and logistics were probably very, very expensive to run. So hopefully the CrossFit Games itself still gets a lot of coverage, and hopefully they're still putting out a lot of good content, which keeps people motivated and interested in the sport.
Yeah, well, from what I've heard, the redirection of the games and the cutting of regionals, a lot of it is cost cutting, right?
Yeah, that's what I've heard too. Yeah,
not to like, obviously we don't speak for CrossFit or
no,
anything.
that's right.
This is what we're just hearing from down the grapevine.
Yeah.
Because if you consider like Australia, we have this big regionals, which now I'm pretty sure costs a lot of money.
For sure.
And then 5 athletes out of how many athletes go to regionals?
Like 30.
All right,
30 from Australia, yeah.
Right, 5 athletes out of 30 men, 30 women, plus 30 teams.
Yep.
And there's no juniors or anything. But so that's a whole bunch of athletes that go to the regional competition. You think about how, like, the logistical nightmare that must be to just get 5 athletes to go to the next level. And you're not talking about a competition that has a high amount of spectatorship, right? Like,
yeah, that's right.
It's not like there's a whole bunch of people there. I mean, there are people there, but it's not like anything crazy, right?
No, it's not. It's not massive. It's not like 60,000 people watching this thing.
So you're not making money. In fact, you're probably losing money.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I would think so. And so, it seems like it makes a lot of sense the direction they're heading, especially when these independent organisations who are, you know, there's definitely a market for it. People want to do the sport. And, you know, having multiple events with multiple opportunities for different sponsors to come in and different people or organisations to put them on, I think it seems like a good thing. And then CrossFit can focus on, you know, the core business and mission that they're putting out there in terms of just driving the affiliates, the community side of things, and the, you know, their campaign against chronic disease and that kind of thing that Glassman's big on at the moment. So
it's all about health. And that's something that they're trying to really separate CrossFit as a sport and CrossFit as a health movement. Yeah,
and I think that's really, for someone like me who has been involved with CrossFit for a while now and has always had to explain, or find myself explaining to people a lot, or clarifying in conversation what we're actually talking about. You know, if we're having a chat about CrossFit, are we talking about the method, or we talk as a training method and as a general like health kind of fitness program, or are we talking about it as a competitive sport? Because there's sort of two different things, and the training for those two different things might be vastly different as well. So I think as time goes on with this new structure, it'll become more obvious and more evident what those two different things are and what kind of training is involved with those things and what kind of people participate in them and that kind of thing. So, yeah.
With your training, sorry, not with your training, with your business, I guess we can call it.
Yeah.
Do you have like a forum where all of your athletes, like a private Facebook group or something?
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
What was what went down on that when all of this news broke?
Yeah, it's like there was some funny memes getting around, like, you know, just in general on the internet. People were like, CrossFitters freaking out about how they're going to make the games, trying to figure it out and stuff. I
know like a lot of your guys are like have aspirations. So like the problem is they have aspirations of going to regionals. They might not necessarily need to go to the games, but regionals was a big deal for
100%,
a lot of CrossFitters, right?
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, for a lot of the guys, regionals, there's more people that have regionals as a dream than there are that probably have games as a dream, really, realistically. So to have that taken out is huge. And even if it might be in a team and not necessarily individually as well. So, you know, so when has been part of a person's motivation for training, it's taken away from them, obviously it's going to raise some questions and affect their motivation. And we definitely had some people whose motivation have been affected from it, and we're still in this like holding pattern at the moment, waiting to know what's going on.
Yeah.
And in terms of like what I keep saying I'm waiting for the rule book. Like I've been waiting for the rule book so that I can make a definitive explanation about how we're going to sort of approach this new season. And in the meantime, I've just been sort of mentioning things here and there. And but really, it causes you to think, why are you doing what you're doing?
Yeah.
And
as an athlete or as a coach?
As an athlete and as a coach, but mainly I'm talking sort of as an athlete.
Yeah.
And at the core of it, and this is just my opinion, but if you're doing it for the right reasons and you're doing it because you want to see self-improvement in your training and physically and mentally, then and you have peace of mind that there will be an opportunity for you to compete. Like I believe it's important for athletes to have an opportunity to compete somewhere in something, but it hasn't had this massive like destructive effect on what I do. It's actually been quite smooth, really, so far anyway. And I guess I probably downplayed it a little bit because it's there's no point. We've got to wait till we examine the facts and then make some calls on it. So there hasn't been a lot of discussion about it just yet. It's been pretty much like business as usual, really, in terms of let's get ready for whatever comps are coming up later in the year that we're already going to be doing anyway, and let's just hold off until we know dates for next year about what we're going to do there. But yeah.
And you spoke before about like the popularity of the sport. If there is a demand for it, something will grow to fill that void, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So when all of your athletes are training to try and make regionals, and that gets taken away, I feel at least like, I mean, there is the Torian Pro, there's a whole bunch of competitions that I think will grow to fill that space.
For sure.
Which means that athletes actually have multiple opportunities to compete, to win prize money, to, you know, support their sponsors, for sponsors to support them.
Yep.
So if anything, the decentralized approach is actually better for the athletes and for the industry, right?
I think so. Like something that turned me away from comps a few years ago was they started to be all these comps going on, and the programming was like pretty rough, and they'd be really hit and miss in terms of the quality of the experience. And we're a bit further along now, and a lot of the actual like just local throwdowns and stuff that are put on now are generally pretty good, or they're a lot better than they used to be. In terms of, I believe anyway, the quality of the programming, and there's not as many stuff-ups with like the scoring and that kind of thing. So like I think there's going to be a better level of professionalism in some of these bigger, more sanctioned events now, which is awesome. But sort of talking about what you were talking about, there's going to be so many more opportunities throughout the whole year for people to do stuff and go and compete. And also it doesn't lock them into anything. So what used to happen before was if regionals is the main event for a particular athlete and they're carrying some kind of injury or niggle, you know, as an example, they don't want to wait a whole nother year it might be the smartest thing for them to maybe not compete, but they'll make the call generally to push through it and do that regionals, because otherwise it's going to be a whole nother year. Whereas now, if it may not be an injury, it could be anything, but if something comes up in your life and kind of disrupts training somehow, or things aren't quite going as you'd planned in your training, you can go, oh look, I'm actually not going to do Wadapalooza or whatever it is. I'm going to actually set my sights for Granite Games or whatever now, and I'm going to readjust so that I can come into it and give it a better go.
So they actually have more opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. It's more flexible in that way. For the guys that are at a very elite level and they've got like different kinds of sponsors and that kind of thing, there's more opportunity for those athletes to get sponsors and for those sponsors to get some recognition at different comps that aren't locked into, just having Reebok on the apparel and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then for the recreational athletes, which is like heaps of them, makes things a bit more interesting because, there's a lot of people out there that like doing CrossFit recreationally and like doing some kind of competition, but regionals is never really going to be on the cards for them. So kind of opens it up a little bit more for that as well, in a way. But it's more that regionals or just below regionals level athlete that's going to feel the difference now in these comps. Yeah.
What do you think is going to be like the changes for just like a recreational athlete? Do you think it actually affects them much? Because I see them like stressing out too. But
what would you define as a recreational athlete?
I don't know. I did the Open last year, and I have no aspirations of doing regionals. So I guess I'm a recreational athlete.
Yeah, like I think they're going to be able to register for these kinds of sanctioned events as well. From what I've seen, most of these sanctioned events are going to have levels. They're going to have like maybe an invitational type level or a top advanced level, and then there's normally like an intermediate and sometimes even a beginner or a master's level and different teams, categories within it. So rather than picking random little in-house kind of comps from, around wherever, there's more opportunity for them to go and go, okay, we're going to go to this major one. I'm just going to register in the scaled or the intermediate level of that comp.
Yeah.
But they'll have better peace of mind knowing that it's probably a more quality program that's going to be on offer in the type of events and WODs that they're going to do. And also, what else was I going to say about that? It could be like a good opportunity for them to do like a multi-day comp, because these big sanctioned events will generally be like at least a 2-day, sometimes even 3-day event. And normally a local games day at a gym will be 1, maybe sometimes 2 days. So I think it's always a bit more fun to have like a multi-day comp for people. If it's only one they're going to do in the year or 2 they're going to do in the year.
So we've talked about the recreational athlete, or the lowest denominator, which is the greatest amount of athletes that are around.
Yeah, for sure.
And then we've talked about the regional athlete.
Yep.
What does this mean for like the high level athletes?
Yeah, so if by high level, I guess you're meaning like people who want to make the games.
I guess people that are already, that are very close to making the games or have made the games in the past.
Yeah.
What does it mean for
Or
them?
even if they're like an outside chance, but they still want to give it their best to do it. It means, well, if they want to go to the games, they've got to, this year, that's actually going to be 2 opens this year. I don't know if you know, but because it's a transition year.
Is it February and November?
The usual date, and then also in November.
Yeah.
So I was reading that from the first open one in February, because there won't be all the sanctioned events kind of finalised by that point, potentially, they're going to take the top 20 from that.
So the top 20 worldwide?
In the worldwide open.
Okay.
So, there's that as one avenue. The other avenue is any one of these sanctioned events, as long as you can win it. If you come first in it, you can get a ticket to the games. And then the third avenue was the one per country thing, where it's like we were talking about before.
So what's crazy to me about that is obviously the whole season has now shifted as well, because the games are now moving from, are they staying in the same time? Like games are normally like end of July, right?
I think they're staying at a similar time. Well, the end of July or first weekend of August.
So what's shifting is that the Open from 2020 will be in November.
Next year in 2019 there'll be two of them, but yeah, it's going to be in November.
So 2019 we're going to have two, but 2020 there's only going to be one, and that's going to be in November. So what?
October, November,
somewhere around there. So what's crazy is that there's actually going to be a whole paradigm shift of like how the season even works, right?
Yeah, it's like a flip. It's like a flip because I think they said the sanctioned events will happen between November and June or something like that.
Yeah.
So they're going to be quite spread out. And so going back to what we were talking about before, with if an athlete is trying to actually legitimately make the games, they'll have multiple opportunities to do different events. If they, you don't want to be doing one every month, I don't think. But there's going to be athletes who fail to make it at Dubai.
Yeah,
that will probably then go and try at Granite or Wodapalooza or something like that. So that's the game they're going to be playing, or they'll be having a red hot go at the Open, and that's going to be an interesting one because those top 20 spots. I mean, the volume of people that do the Open, the sheer numbers that are involved in that. If you're having a go at that, you cannot have a bad week at all. You have to be like right up there every single week for every single workout. You're talking multiple attempts of the workouts. The videos and the judging's got to be like on point because that's going to need to be submitted. They're going to scrutinise those videos for those top 20 guys for every single workout, I would hope. That's a completely different beast to these other kind of one and done kind of events, like standalone events, live events. So the type of athlete that you are will affect what's more appealing to you. You've got to play to your strengths, I guess, a little bit. And some athletes do perform really well in the Open, not so much in the live sort of regional style event, and vice versa. So that's definitely something that needs to be considered for each of these top level athletes as well.
It almost seems like the Open is going to be the hardest way to qualify almost. I mean, not in this first year, because the first year you get 20.
You get these 20 which spots. Is still going to be hard.
Yeah.
But, the Open's going to be, it's a very different Open to what we're used to anyway as well.
Yeah, it's crazy. And that means that and this goes back to what we were talking about at the start. And like last podcast, you said you'd like the test to be more there's more variation to really test all of the domains of fitness. Mm-hmm. And now they're going to have to do that. They can't leave things for regionals to test. They can't leave things later on to test. Now they're going to have to like be very broad and have a lot of different things, right?
Well,
or no, like you might disagree.
They don't have. I don't think, from what I hear, they don't have to really have any. They have to. It seems like CrossFit is sanctioning events that have got a bit of a track record of being successful and having good events and that kind of thing. And I think that CrossFit won't. I don't know what their conditions for being a sanctioned event are. Like I haven't applied for one of these things, but they might have some requirements in there around like there needs to be like running and swimming and that kind of thing. Maybe they have to submit a program, in order a prototype or like a rough copy of a program for CrossFit to approve. But I've actually heard people say that that's not much of the case at all. CrossFit hasn't imposed too many like specific regulations around what the events need to entail. So I don't know, but to answer your question, like maybe they won't be I think they will. Like I think we will see exciting events. I think that's
in the Open.
At these sanctioned events, I think we actually will.
Yeah.
In the Open, I think they'll be quite similar to what they have been, just due to like the logistics of what the gyms can actually like facilitate. Really. Yeah. Like.
But for example, like
what's an example for you?
So I like 2013.
Yeah.
When they did, was it 2012? Maybe 7 minutes of burpees.
Yes.
Is, in my opinion, not a great test.
Yes.
Because it's very, like, just fitness based. Like, pretty much
it's anyone... one-dimensional test.
Anyone off the street can come in and do 7 minutes of burpees. And let's say you have someone who's not ready to be any sort of level in CrossFit because they don't have any other skills, can do that and do very well.
But someone say that's a good event for that reason.
For that reason, yeah, true. I guess I agree with that. But then, because of that, Okay, let's go to 2013 then.
Yeah.
When it was 7 minutes of burpees plus the snatches.
Yeah.
Right? You have all these people who have these ridiculous time break times, which really shuffles up the leaderboard.
That's right. Yeah.
And then you have the 60 kilo snatch that no one can do because they haven't done that before.
Yeah.
And that messes with the leaderboard.
Yeah.
Like, are we going to see events like that again? Or are we going to see like some really differently thought out events
In the open?
in the open?
I think if you're talking like scoring errors, like mistakes that, I mean, not mistakes, but like those kind of situations which like really skew the leaderboard a certain way. I think over time, probably see less of that. Like they're getting,
which we do. Like,
they get a bit smarter with the statistics of it all, and they realise like we can't really do that because then it's going to skew it this way or whatever. Sometimes they know full well what they're doing and they just don't care as well. Yeah. But if you're talking about like in the open having like diverse events like swimming and that kind of thing.
I don't think we'll see swimming. But
that's what I thought you were talking about.
Okay,
before.
Yeah. I'm mainly saying like I would love to see obviously like a feat of strength in the open that is easy to test. So like a one arm snatch, one arm clean and jerk, one arm thruster, something that is kind of easy to test. I would like to see something that's obviously really cool to watch in terms of like gymnastic feats. Like I think you can't have athletes go to any sort of level that can't do multiple muscle ups in a row or handstand push ups, and then there needs to be some sort of like real fitness component or like an ability to work under pressure. So like, you know, wall balls and double unders for a long period of time to stand. Like, I know the open has historically not been workouts longer than like 30 minutes.
Yeah,
like,
that's right.
Do we need to have workouts that are longer as well?
Yeah. I think we'll see them push the boundaries in that way. But they've got to be careful with, in the open, everything can just get magnified with just the way the numbers work.
Yeah.
So if they go for a very specific test, if you've got like 5 different tests across the 5 weeks, but one of them is just this random outlier that tests something really specific or like really too far in the strength end of things or really too far in the endurance end of things, it skews all the other 4. And it skews everything.
Was that what we talked about last time? Was there an event last year that did that?
In the past open, there was a heavy clean. Yeah. And a lot of athletes benefited or that was the end of them basically in that particular event. And it always happens when there's a heavy lift, particularly in the open, because of the huge volume of people that participate in it.
Okay.
And because of there's plenty of people out there that are happy to jump in and put up a big lift. And so the big lift will probably be more attractive for people to come in and throw the numbers out rather than the 30-minute or 40-minute workout that they're yet to do in the open.
Of course.
It's always something in the open that's hard for them to get too fancy because it can throw things right out. And all it ends up meaning is that year, the people that go to the old regionals are of a certain type. Like they might be bigger and heavier than the year before because they had that one particular event.
Which we've seen in the past.
And we've seen that happen. You know, we've seen athletes who have come like in the top 5 or 10 at the regionals the year before, failed to qualify for the regionals the year after because of heavy events like that. Is that wrong? Is that bad programming? Who's to say? Like, you can't really say. It's just, it is what it is. And the whole idea with the sport is that you need to be able to just cop it and do it.
Yeah.
And if you're an athlete that's at the weaker end of the spectrum, the reality is with these heavy events, you're probably going to get 1 year in every, it might be every 5 years. You might qualify 4 years, and there might be always just this 1 year every 5 years that you can't because that lift was no good for you or whatever. And that's just the nature of the sport, And
it's a testament to the athletes that do somehow manage to qualify year after year after year.
Yeah, it's amazing. Guys like Rob Fort, come to mind, like going to the games over and over again and just being in the sport for so long.
What about people that maybe historically wouldn't fit the archetype of the sport, like Chad? Like, he's multiple-time games athlete, and he's not the CrossFit.
Chad was Yeah, you look at Rob and you can just look like he's stocky.
Yeah.
He's got the dimensions. He's about the average height and weight of a CrossFitter, and it's like, okay, it makes sense that it doesn't make sense, but like you can see how a guy with that build and can make it year after year and not have like a bad year kind of thing. But then when you look at someone like Chad, it's pretty crazy what he was able to do. Yeah. Pretty amazing athlete to be able to move so well and be that big and still be able to do everything that's required.
Do you mind if we take a quick break just to make sure everything's going well?
Yeah.
Now, we just wanted to check that it did film what we had, because if it cuts out, it'll cut out everything.
Yeah, okay.
But if I stop and start, then at least we've got the first, however long we've been recording for.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. Let's talk about your training now.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
You did a powerlifting comp like 2 months ago.
I did, yeah. I did a powerlifting comp. It's my third ever powerlifting comp. And the idea with this one, last year I put a big effort into kind of putting my other training aside, at least for the couple months leading into it, and really tried to push my powerlifting numbers up and give that comp a good go. And I was able to get some good lifts up in that one, some PRs on my squat and deadlift. This year, my intention was to have a bit more of a balanced approach to my training, where I'm still able to compete in CrossFit, and I consider myself more like recreational, not nothing CrossFit Games or anything like that, but still enjoy being able to be at a level where I'm happy with my still improving in CrossFit in some ways. I'm 35 years old, so I'm not like expecting exponential improvements. I'm like a masters athlete now, but I'm really enjoying at the moment still seeing progress in my fitness across all the different areas. So that's been pleasing. But in terms of the powerlifting this year, I wanted to still follow my main CrossFit program, tweak it a little bit in a way that I could still peak a little bit for a powerlifting comp and just see how well I could do in that powerlifting comp while maintaining my like regular kind of CrossFit routine, basically, mostly for the most part.
Can you talk to us a bit about maybe what that looked like?
Yeah, so I'm really big at the moment on trying to find a good rhythm in my day-to-day, just work life and training and that kind of thing, because it's something that I've lacked over the past couple of years with just focusing on my own coaching and work and that kind of thing. So my training looks like, basically, I set aside 2 hours a day to train, from like 7:30 in the morning to 9:30. That's my main training times for most days of the week, and that's when I'm like, okay, that's your time to train. Get done what you can get done. And so for me, what that looks like is basically the main Starr Strength and Performance program that I write for my athletes, like the group-based template. I'm just following that, and there is one or two additional workouts in the evenings or in the mornings in the week that I'll do on top of that, and they've got a slight endurance bias to them, so they'll be like rowing or running or those kinds of things.
For like a long, like a more almost like steady state, like
depending on what it is, but largely aerobically focused. Yeah.
Okay. Can you give us an example of what those extra workouts would look like?
Like the running ones will generally from Tim Branson from the Running Lab, who does have the running component of our program.
Yeah.
That's on a Thursday morning, and that'll generally be like a series of intervals.
Okay.
Totaling in about somewhere between like 2.5 and 5 Ks of total running, and the distances will be, depending on what it is, they kind of undulate each week. So it might be like 1 to 200 intervals one week, and another week it might be like intervals ranging from like 4 to 800 kind of thing. It just sort of depends, but that just gives you a bit of a rough idea. Yeah. And then there might be another endurance day where I'm doing like some rowing or bike intervals that are a similar kind of thing.
And do you think those extra days of I guess, fitness training can aid someone who is like me or one of my athletes that's majority a weightlifter?
Yeah. So I've found them to be really beneficial, not only for supporting the classic CrossFit training for CrossFit, like just the Metcons and the CrossFit WODs, for like helping the energy systems with that and facilitating recovery from those. But also for if you're trying to get strong, but you also want to maintain some level of like cardiovascular fitness without losing strength.
Yeah.
If you're doing like sustainable aerobic type work that's like low impact and like cyclical in nature, like biking and rowing are like the two main ones for me. I found that they have very little interference with the strength part of the training, as long as they're sort of done in reasonable volumes and the intensity isn't such that it's really like lactic and that kind of thing. It's more of like aerobic.
And what's a like a reasonable volume
of that kind of stuff? So for a
just for our listeners,
like for let's say you do you'll say you're a weightlifter like yourself. I think you would be fine to do like 2 additional low intensity aerobic sessions a week without too much problem, and you wouldn't see much interference with your weightlifting. I mean, what I found with my powerlifting is I was much more sensitive to interference with the strength work closer to the competition when I was like trying to peak and hit like heavy singles or heavy doubles in training. But the further out I was, like if I was in like a more hypertrophy or strength type block where the reps are a little bit higher, I was able to get away with more other training, like other endurance type training and mixed modal type work and that kind of thing. But it's definitely, if it's as opposed to mixed modal, like the cyclical, like biking, rowing, swimming, running, those kinds of things, better for like if you're trying to get strong at the same time. Okay. Yeah, for sure. And
going back, sorry, I did interrupt you.
Yeah.
But if we're going to talk about like what your actual training look like, where you are training for CrossFit, but you're also trying to train for a dual sport. And we kind of touched on this last time when we were talking about Alethea training for both CrossFit and Commonwealth Games and Olympic weightlifting.
Yeah.
But now that you're also doing it yourself for the powerlifting, what does that training look like? Is it, can you give us a rundown on that?
Well, the first thing I'll say is like every individual is going to be a little bit different, depends on their training history and that kind of thing. But what my training looked like through this past, let's say, the past 4 months, but it's definitely the 2 months leading into that comp, it would be a standard kind of what I consider a standard like CrossFit 2-hour session. If you're training to compete in CrossFit, would be like you'd start with some lifting, generally like some heavier barbell work. Then you might move into some other strength and accessory work, and maybe some gymnastics, which is like not a WOD, but it's some kind of like maybe some supersets going back and forth between like some muscle ups and another barbell movement, accessory barbell movement, something like that.
So you almost like, because this is something I love.
Yeah.
I love the fact that you can use gymnastic movements as your accessory work.
Yeah.
So like you're killing 2 birds with one stone, because you're first off, you're training like these neurological patterns of like learning new skills or practicing new skills. But at the end of the day, a muscle up is a pull up and a dip.
Yeah, that's right.
Well. So you're doing some, back development work and some, pressing development work.
For sure.
As well.
Yeah, for sure. So, like going back to the session, like it would be some lifting, some stuff like that you're mixing some elements of training, and it's kind of looking a bit like supersetting, but there's some gymnastics and then there's some external loads, that kind of stuff.
Are you out of breath during this period as well?
Generally, that's more like, it would look like sets and reps of strength work. More so. It might be on a clock, it might be like an EMOM format, but it's not like metabolic conditioning kind of thing.
You're not just like...
No, it's maybe strength endurance kind of thing, but more local muscle fatigue if there is fatigue. And then the third part of the session is like the more of a conditioning focused piece, which it might be like a CrossFit WOD type thing, or it might be like some intervals for some energy system work or something like that. And that will be like a typical kind of template for a session, and I would be doing them like 4 or 5 days a week as the main session. Now within that CrossFit template, what I was doing for my powerlifting, if the CrossFit program my main program that I'm following, if it was calling for on that particular day squats, I would be doing, like, instead of high bar, which we get most of our CrossFit guys to do most of the time, I'd be doing low bar, and I'd probably have my belt on and my knee sleeves particularly closer to the comp, and I would, depending on the rep schemes, leading into the competition, I sort of ran like more of a peaking phase leading into the comp. So in a peaking phase for the powerlifting stuff, the frequency of the lifts actually goes up. So I'd add in another little bit of squatting throughout the week, but I'm not doing a lot of reps, and the intensity is quite high. So I might be 2 back squats at like 90%. And then the next day I might need to do another 2 back squats at 85% or something like that. So I was adding in a little bit more frequency on the lifts, and the main program might have had like 5x5, for example. I see. So I was just manipulating them a little bit closer to the comp. But generally I was staying pretty close to what we would normally do, which is like back squat once a week, front squat once a week, deadlift once a week kind of thing. Most of the year we tend to do that.
That's kind of what we do as weightlifters too.
Yeah.
So we might back squat 3 times a week.
Yeah.
Because, like everyone loves squatting.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it depends what phase of the year. I generally will do things in I try to kind of block it out a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, in CrossFit training, there's a lot of chaos because you're doing mixed modal work. So
there's a lot that you need to practice for.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different skills to practice for. So it's this battle that I have as a CrossFit programmer to try and find ways of progressing things and having sound principles, but also keep bringing in the variety that you just need to be having as a CrossFitter to make sure you're touching on all the different skills.
Yeah.
But generally, I'll try to have phases that look a bit more like hypertrophy, muscle endurance type phases, and then we'll tend to go into more like a strength kind of block, and then more into like a power block, or a block that might have a bit more Olympic lifting in it, a bit more power stuff. That's generally what we sort of try and do. It's a lot easier to have those phases in like an off-season part of the year. When you get into more like pre-season and times where the athletes need to be competing in CrossFit, it isn't as neatly blocked out as that. It starts to get a lot more mixed and chaotic.
So you talked about your training with the squats. Can you just give people an explanation of the difference between high bar and low bar squats, just in case they might not know?
Okay. So the high bar technique is much more upright. The bar sits higher up on the back, so it just sits across the back of the traps, and it's the most popular one. It's probably one that people have, if they train at a CrossFit gym or a weightlifting gym, it's probably the type of back squat that they have been taught how to do. The low bar back squat is generally just used as a competition to gain a competitive advantage in the sport of powerlifting. It's not used as much for any other reason.
Why would someone what is the competitive advantage of squatting low bar?
Yeah, so the bar sits lower down your back. That's why it's called the low bar. So instead of resting on top of the traps, it'll be a bit further down the back. It takes a bit of getting used to. People have to find their kind of where it's comfortable for them to sit it. But it shortens up that lever. So it basically has the bar sitting down further down so that your torso, you see your torso when you squat, the torso will lean forward and create a bit of a lever. And the higher up your back that barbell is, the longer that lever is, and the harder it is for your body to lift the load. So if it's further down your back, it puts you in a stronger position, basically.
Yeah.
It generally allows you to recruit more posterior chain, so more of your glutes and your hamstrings. And like I said, it has a shorter lever as well. So those 2 reasons are the main thing. Yeah.
And it's obviously another skill that you've thrown into the mix now as well.
Yep.
Practicing your low bar squat. Is there an advantage to practicing low bar squats for a CrossFitter, or do you not really think so?
I don't use it a lot. I have used it. If there's athletes that are really sort of quad dominant, and I can tell that they really have trouble like using their hamstrings and their arse when they squat, we'll play around with we might put them through a phase of doing low bar. The thing with the low bar, it does shorten up the range of motion, and it doesn't have as much carryover to most of the other movements in CrossFit. So generally in CrossFit, if we're thinking about why we're squatting because we want to have leg strength to be able to do things like wall balls or snatching or clean jerks, and it needs a bit more of a vertical torso position anyway. The high bar is more it's more of an athletic movement because you can get a bit more of a stretch, shortened cycle out of the bottom. You're actually recruiting more musculature and going through a larger range of motion with it. So they say it has better carryover to other athletic movements.
Who's they?
When I say they, I mean when I've spoken to powerlifters and other strength coaches, and just from my knowledge and experience, it's the conclusion I guess I've come to. Okay. Yeah, and what I've been told. Yeah.
I'm always curious about who they
Who is they? Yeah. When I said they, I'm like, he's going to wonder who I'm talking about.
And you have had an experience with some of the top powerlifting coaches in Australia, right?
Yeah.
Like talking to them and training with them. Like, you want to speak on that a little bit too?
Yeah, for sure. A big mentor of mine with powerlifting and strength training in general has been Amir from Adonis Athletics.
Yeah.
He's the one that coached me into both of my first powerlifting comps last year. And he's also come along to my training camps and presented to my athletes as well on strength training and deadlift technique and that kind of thing.
Because he was I don't know if he still is, but he was a world record holder in the deadlift.
He was, yeah. And so he's an amazing athlete, but he's a super knowledgeable, experienced guy. And I've consulted with him a fair bit on getting his influence on my programming with the CrossFitters and trying out some of his protocols and finding out what works and what doesn't work within our training paradigm, in terms of like I've been able to actually firsthand experience amazing results through his coaching in powerlifting. Amazing results for me in terms of improvements. But if you were to you can't just take a powerlifting program and then just give it to a CrossFit and have them do all their other CrossFit training, because obviously it's going to end up being too much overall training volume. So, this is where I'm fascinated to sort of keep learning about this interplay between the endurance and the strength work and how they can both be optimized so that you're making gains in both areas.
And did you make gains in both areas?
Yeah, well, okay, so this year when I did the powerlifting comp, the most recent powerlifting comp, so the one that I was doing all this CrossFit training and then just tweaking it a little bit for the comp, I got to my total, so if you add up my squat, my deadlift, and my bench press from this comp, it ended up being 97% total of what I did last year when I was purely focusing on the powerlifting for the lead up. So I was pretty happy with that total. Like I was aiming for like within 5. I didn't think I'd exceed it. I knew I was a little bit weaker, but I still felt generally pretty strong. And I was aiming for like within 5%, 5 to 10%. I would have been pretty disappointed if I didn't get within like 10% of it. Yeah. That being said, though, it was interesting because the lifts were quite different. The bench was only like 92%. The bench took the biggest hit out of the three lifts. Yeah, and I think that was because of two things. One is that my bench has never been great, so I think it's the most sensitive to like losing upper body strength when I've had other training elements going on. And the other thing is like CrossFit training involves, strict handstand push-ups, muscle ups. There's actually quite a bit of upper body work in other CrossFit training. So I think there was probably a bit of interference from that as well. Yeah. Bench also requires more frequency than the squat and the deadlift.
Is that because of the technical aspect of it, or because it just?
I think because it's a smaller muscle group, it should be trained more frequently. So most powerlifting programs I've seen, the bench is done more frequently than, say, the deadlift, for example. Yeah. So because I wasn't probably hitting it as frequently as maybe I needed, that's why it didn't progress as well. Yeah. So it's a combination of a few things there. The squat was the next worst in terms of like how close I was able to get to my old numbers. Yeah. The squat's always been like naturally my best lift. But the deadlift, interestingly enough, I was able to pull more on the deadlift this time. I think that was purely due to just me like desire to pull it on the day. Well, it looked nowhere near as good as the deadlift last time. Like the deadlift last time, I probably had another maybe 10 kilos maybe in the tank. It was like pretty smooth. This deadlift was like, you could tell a definite max. Like it's the ugliest deadlift I've ever done.
Not a technical max, like an actual
max.
Like
a true max, yeah. So I probably actually, even though the numbers said that I'd improved on the deadlift, my actual true strength in the depth probably wasn't quite as much as it was last year.
So why do you think the squat and deadlift? Oh, why do you think the squat maybe didn't improve as much? Or not that it didn't improve. Was it just that you were taking away quality volume to do other things? Or
I think it didn't improve because it was tracking really well into the peaking phase, like the 3 weeks leading in, and
when you say tracking really well, you mean like you predicted 1RM off like the weights you were hitting, or
it was like the numbers that I was sort of aiming for and the way it was tracking, it was improving. It was tracking really well, and then about 3 weeks out was when it did stagnate a bit, and it just started like I couldn't like add weight anymore. I was like pretty much just staying at that same weight each time I came in. I was like, okay, well this is probably going to be the best I can do. By then you get a rough idea of what you can do. Whereas last year, I remember coming in and like each session, I'm like, I can't believe how much weight is on the bar now, and I'm going to go more, and then it would go up easy, and like I was having that feeling of like it was truly like peaking, as opposed to just being a bit more blunt this time.
That's a fun experience. Isn't it? Oh, I can do more this week! Yay!
Yeah. I think as you get older, it gets harder and harder as well. But yeah, it's.
So how many?
But in the lead up to. In terms of my other training in the lead up to this powerlifting comp, I like PR'd my 2K row, for example.
Oh, okay.
And I was able to like hit. I was getting up to like numbers on my muscle ups and stuff like that are close to what my best ever, kind of when I was really going hard on CrossFit kind of thing. Yeah. So if I could take like this current experience and compare it to last, I always wanted to tick off that like go all out for the powerlifting comp last year. But in terms of like, if I could choose like an ongoing thing, like the blend I've got going at the moment, I'm enjoying a lot. And I've always valued being like all rounder, and that's obviously why I'm in CrossFit. So, having that focus at the moment's been good.
And obviously being an all rounder, I like being able to improve two qualities, or at least keep one quality the same, while something on the opposite end, which is like a 2K row. Like, I mean, you could argue that like a 30-second airline sprint is much closer to like a 1RM squat, whereas like a 2K row it really isn't, right?
That's right. Yeah. I think you could. That's the 2K row has been something like I'm not a great rower, but like it's pretty funny me battling away with this 2K row. It's like the bane of my existence, But like it's just like a really pure measure of like there's nowhere to hide on it,
Yeah.
So like with so many other things in CrossFit, you have these workouts, these benchmark workouts, but if it's 2K row combined with pull-ups, it's a completely different thing because you can just gain an advantage on the pull-ups, whereas on a row I just know that it's not in my wheelhouse, and I can it just gives me so much truth as to whether I've actually improved aerobically or also with the rowing itself, like technique wise or whatever. But there's also like the 10-minute air bike and that kind of stuff, which is just these pure endurance tests.
So that if you really don't like someone, you give them a 10-minute. You have a really fun little test that you made us do today. Can you speak a bit about that? 30 second.
Well, it's not mine. It's something that I've just been reading about recently and learned from the OPEX guys.
Yeah.
So James Fitzgerald and that, but we didn't even really do the full test, but we were mucking around on the row, weren't we?
Yeah.
And Kurt had us doing 20-second sprints. And then it just reminded me of this thing that I'd heard about with these OPEX guys was this 4 sets of 30-second on, 30 seconds off. And we started doing it a little bit with some of our guys, but today we just did 1 30-second effort, didn't we? And someone said to me, the OPEX guys, that if you can get your body weight in pounds, so let's say you weigh 180 pounds, which is like just over 80 kilograms, you should be able to get 180 meters on the rower in 30 seconds. So we gave it a go today.
and when you say that, like that's an all-out sprint,
yep.
And that's only on the first effort of your 4 efforts? Or are you meant to
that's
be
an
able to-
all-out sprint, and you should, that's a good sort of benchmark to be able to try and aim for. Apparently,
Yeah.
And if you can exceed that, then you're fairly powerful on the rower, and if you can't, then you may not be. But then what's interesting is then if you can compare 30 on, 30 off for a series of say 4, and all of them's an all-out effort, it's interesting to note whether the you can start to get an idea of this athlete's profile in terms of how aerobic they are and enduring versus power.
So it's almost like they're because it's 30 seconds, that'd still be a lactate recovery then, right?
Well, it's in that sort of lactic time domain. So it's how, but in terms of recovering from that lactic effort, the aerobic system contributes very heavily to that.
Okay.
So, you're kind of testing all your energy systems in a way.
Yeah.
But it's basically just giving you an idea of how well that athlete can recover from repeated bouts of intense effort, and also how intense those initial efforts are relative to the recovery as well. So you might have one athlete who can get 200 on their first one, and then they're only out. Then it drops down to like 150 on the next one, 120 on the third one, and then they're all the way down to like 80 on the fourth.
Yeah.
Obviously, they're quite powerful at the front end, but then can't maintain it. And then you'll have other athletes that just get like almost exactly the same across all 4 intervals. But they may not be particularly impressive on the power output.
Yeah.
That can then be used as a tool to direct training, and the first athlete will need more aerobic based intervals or energy system type work that's going to allow them to be more enduring, and then the second athlete is going to probably need some specific like sprint short intervals to get that power up on the rower. Yeah.
And if we, I don't know if this would work, and you could probably speak on this. Let's say we had a weightlifter.
Yep.
This would be a really safe way to test, first off, their power output per body weight, because that's what that first test does, right?
Yep.
So we've tested that. And then secondly, let's say that, so we've got one athlete, he does pull like what you did. So you pulled 175 meters?
Yes, I did today.
Which worked out to be right on with your body weight.
Funny that.
Yeah, which is good.
Well, I took Kurt's advice and it had the projected finish on there. So, yeah, I think if I didn't have the projected finish, I probably would have fallen a bit short, but it kept me honest.
Yeah, no, you did really well. And so that's obviously, if what you said was right, then we could say that your power output per your body weight is very good.
Well, I don't know if it's very good. But,
it's on par with the expectations of OPEX.
That was just something that was thrown around. I mean, I don't know how good is that. That might be like a basic pass mark or whatever.
Okay.
It's probably not that impressive. I'm not much of a rower, but it's just an interesting tool, I think. It's not so much for comparing, I think, athletes to each other.
Yeah.
It's more about
a self-diagnostic.
Self-diagnostic, and then repeating that later on in the training program to see if they've brought their endurance up or what have you. Yeah.
Anyway, so and then we do a repeated effort with the same athlete.
Yep.
And what we can gauge then is maybe their ability to recover from maximal attempts.
Yes.
Because in weightlifting, for example, you might do a snatching competition at 95%, 97%, and then come back and you might have to go up straight away to do your second attempt. And if you're not on par with that recovery, we don't know like whether you're going to get it or not. And if we do this really simple test, which like if it's 4:30 seconds, that's 4 minutes on the rower. In that 4 minutes, we can test whether first off he's ready to go again without actually having to do the snatches.
Oh yeah, and this reminds me of a few things, but I mean. You're right. I think it would be useful, but I think the time domain will probably be reduced to like more of a
10-second
alactic time domain. You could do it with like sub 10 seconds or 10 seconds or however low it goes. But you could also, and this is getting a bit out of my area of expertise, but like you could do that with like some kind of probably jump training or like force platforms as well, and recovery between those. But when I arrived today, we started talking about like your level of fitness and how you believe it's important to keep your lifters with some amount of aerobic fitness, cardiovascular fitness, in order to help recovery, not only between sessions but also probably between lifts, right, as well in competition.
Yeah.
So using some of these other tools from like rowing or cycling as like little indicators of their ability to recover, I think is pretty smart. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd probably go with like, if we were going to use that, like a 10-minute test, 10-second test.
Yeah.
Repeatable.
And again, the test can change with how close you are to a competition or not as well. So if we did want to test like sets of 5 or sets of 3, maybe we could use those longer durations. And then as we get closer, when we're doing like 1 or 2 reps at high percentages, use a shorter duration.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to think about like how I could fit this into my programming as well.
Yeah. If you're doing, obviously it's a little bit different because the type of contraction is different. Like in terms of if you're doing it on a bike, like the turnover of like the contraction speed ends up eliciting like a different metabolic kind of effect in the local muscle. The things that allow you to recover well from between 2 Olympic lifts in like a 2-minute period are not necessarily the same things that allow you to recover well between like multiple 10-second bike or rowing intervals. Some of them will be obviously interrelated, and it will probably give you a bit of an idea about that athlete's ability to recover, but some of them are just purely like neural and concentration ability and that kind of thing as well, I imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense. Like there is like a multiple, like there's so many facets at play.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
All right. I want to be mindful of your time too, because we've been going for a fair while.
Yeah, no worries.
You're going to get caught to traffic on the way back.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that now.
So yeah, feel free to hang around afterwards if you want to do some work upstairs or whatever.
Yeah.
My last question for you is like, obviously you've done this competition. What would you change? What were the biggest takeaways? What were you learning from doing having to work on dual aspects of your training at the same time?
I'd probably try and make time to be able to train the power lifts a bit more frequently. I probably wouldn't change much with the other training. I'd try to keep that the same, but I'd probably make time to do the lifts a little bit more frequently, like the bench press, for example, that kind of thing. Even if it wasn't as higher intensity, but it was at least the body like feeling the movements and being able to like feel in tune with the competition lifts closer to the actual comp.
Yeah.
In those last few weeks leading in.
Yeah.
I did reduce my other training a little bit more in that peaking phase just in the last like 2 weeks, particularly the last week leading in, like it's a bit of a taper. But I think that was necessary. I probably wouldn't change that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. That's awesome, man. That's actually a really cool story because it's such a cool case study of like how you can train different things. For a long time, people would say that you can't.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, isn't it? And like just CrossFit in general is challenging. Like you've got these athletes who are getting pretty strong, but they're also quite impressive in the fitness stuff that they can do and the energy systems. So obviously I'm really interested and curious about all that. And this is just part of like the practical side of like learning it for myself firsthand and taking some things that I can then use to help with coaching and my own training in the future and stuff like this, just sharing it on with you today. So
it's awesome, man.
Thanks very much for the opportunity to get back on. And
always. Dude, anytime you want to be on, if you have something to say, like I would love to. I really enjoyed, like after you left last time, well, it's not after you left, after we finished last time, we were like talking for like an hour after.
That's right, yeah.
So it's just awesome to catch up with you.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
I just had to make up an excuse to catch up with you.
Yeah, the change in the game seasons was a good one. It gave us something to talk about. So, yeah, hopefully we hear about it soon and maybe we'll do another one.
Yeah. Where can people find you and who do you want to plug and all of that?
Just if they want to know about what I do, you can go to Starr Strength Performance and there's a website and Instagram and stuff. So yeah.
So that's at Starr Strength and Performance.
Oh, the Instagram is at *Starr_Strength.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if they want to follow you, you've got your own personal Instagram.
Oh yeah, Instagram Starr Luke.
Yeah.
~R. Yeah. Any of the things I just mentioned, the Starr is 2 R's because it's my surname. Yeah.
Awesome. And guys, you can find RAW Barbell Club at RAW Barbell Club on all of our social medias. So that's Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Snapchat, and all the in-between. We're regularly posting really cool content. So I would love to see you guys. Well, I wouldn't love to. I hope you love to see us do all of this stuff. And 2 quick things before you go. The first is we've released a free squatting ebook for CrossFitters. So if you're a recreational CrossFitter who needs to improve their squatting strength, I've got a 2-day-a-week program that is on our website for free. Just go onto our Linktree or Instagram and you'll be able to find the link in our bio. And then lastly, if you need more help than that, we've got a free Facebook group. It's called Strength Training Tips, where we just give away free information. So if you ask a question, any of the coaches on there will answer it or try to answer it. And it's becoming this growing thing, where we're adding more and more coaches. So maybe I'll even add Luke to it.
Yeah, I'd love to jump on.
Questions.
Yeah.
So it'd be really awesome for you to be on there. And if you like this podcast, to tell Luke that you liked it so he knows, or just give us a 5-star rating and share it around, because I love talking to Luke. I love talking to all these guys, but they need to know it too. Otherwise they don't come back.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Andy.
No worries, man. All right, we're done.